And we'll continue with the fourth chapter of An Acceptable Time by Madeleine L'Engle. When her grandmother came in to say goodnight, Polly was deep in Bishop Colubra's notebook. This ogum's really not too difficult as long as I don't try to connect it with Latin or Greek roots, but think of it as a made-up language. Polly, her grandmother sat on the edge of the bed. It is my hope that you are not going to have any opportunity to speak this language. I love languages, Grand. They're fun. You know how Granddad loves to do his puzzle in the paper every day? It's the same sort of thing. Her grandmother ruffled her hair. I want you to have fun, my dear, but not to get yourself into any kind of danger. I hope you'll have fun with Zachary on Thursday, but he strikes me as a complex young man, and I'm very uncomfortable with the idea that you think he's seen someone from the past. I find it pretty uncomfortable, too. And you'll stay away from the pool and the star-watching rock? Yes, we will. Polly sighed, then indicated the pile of books still on her bed table. I went through the parts you marked and took notes. I love learning from you, Grand. You don't miss school? I didn't much like it. I was used to being taught by Mother and Daddy when we lived on Gaia. And the Cowperton school was pretty boring after that. I wasn't that great at school. Okay, but not great. Your mother must have understood that. School was disastrous for her till she went to college. I find that hard to believe. Believe it. But she's so brilliant. She's good at difficult stuff, but not with the easy. I guess you're not unlike her in that. Well, maybe. Like Zachary, I'm better if I'm interested. The only teacher I really liked left, and after last year, I could go to Beulaire and do homework there, and Max could make it interesting. Her death must have been a great grief to you, her grandmother touched her gently on the knee. Yes, it is, but Max would want me to get on with life, and that's what I'm trying to do, but I do miss... For a moment, her voice trembled. Max was very close to Sandy and Rhea, too. Sandy says her death left a big hole in their lives. I guess the planet is riddled with holes, isn't it? From all the people who've lived and then died, do the holes ever get filled? That's a good question. Grand, those people I saw when I went back, Anarel, and maybe you don't want to talk about it? Go on. They've been dead maybe 3,000 years, she shuddered involuntarily. What about their holes? Are the holes just always there waiting to be filled? You have always tended to ask unanswerable questions. I don't know about those holes. All I know is that Max gave you great riches, and we would, all of us, be less than we are if it weren't for those we love, and who've loved us, who have died. Her grandmother rose, bent down and kissed Polly. Good night, my dear. Sleep well. Polly woke up, freezing. Her quilt had slid to the floor. She was caught in a dream. Not quite a nightmare, of Zachary driving along a winding road in the Bishop's blue pickup truck. She was in the back of the truck, and icy rain was drenching her. Every time Zachary hit a bump, she was nearly thrown out. To one side of the road was a cliff. To the other, a drop down to a valley far below. The truck hit a bump, and she woke up. Hadron's warm body was not by her. She picked up the quilt and huddled under it. Her feet were like ice. There was no way she was going to be able to escape the dream and go back to sleep until she warmed up. The meaning of the dream was apparent to her. It was simply her reaction to Zachary's phone call and had, she thought, no particular meaning of its own. She had dreamed of the rain chilling her because the quilt had slid off the bed and she was frozen. The wind hit again. The wind hit against the house, emphasizing the cold. The pool. It was by far the warmest place in the house. Forgetting her promises, forgetting for the moment the reason for them, aware only that she was shivering, she tiptoed downstairs. All the fires were banked. The house was cold. She opened the door to the room with the pool and was met with a humid warmth and a green smell from all the plants which flourished there. Moonlight was coming through the skylights. The plants hanging in the windows made strange shadows. Then, as her eyes adjusted, she saw an unexpected shadow, a darkness in one of the poolside chairs. Someone was sitting there. Terrified, she reached for the light switch, and the room was flooded with light. Anarel leapt from the chair like a wild gazelle, more frightened than Polly. Surely Anarel's world knew electricity only as lightning unleashed and dangerous. Polly's heart stopped pounding in her throat. Lights! Electric lights! Don't be afraid. Anarel capsized rather than sat back down. Bishop told me about the lights. Yes, still it frightens me. No one can hear us? Not if we're quiet. How did you get here? I came from our great standing stones to this place of water in a box. Anirul was referring to the pool that was over an underground river. Where your water in a box is in your time circle. In my circle, it is our most holy ground, the stones that stand over the scent of water. I lay on the sarsen, and I thought about you, and I called myself to you, and I came. She looked at Polly with a delighted smile. Then she got up and walked slowly around the room, looking at the poolside chairs, the stationary bike Polly's grandmother used when the weather was too inclement for walking outside. Bishop says you live in-house. We are in-house? Yes. This is the new wing built for the pool, the water in a box. Of course, Anirul would know nothing about a house or its contents. Anirul picked up a paperback book lying on a small table by the chair where she had been sitting. One day, Bishop brought book to show me. Bishop says you have stories in books, many stories. Corrales says that for stories, the writing has to be more full than ours, less simple. Yes, more complex. Anirul touched her forehead. Druids have stories here. Druids have stories here, many stories. We keep the memory. Without our memory, we would be less... I do not know the word. Our books are like keepers of the memory. In them we have the stories of many people, many times, many cultures. Cultures? People who live in different circles of place as well as time. Anirul nodded. You are certain you are not a druid? Polly laughed. Positive. But you have gifts. You cross the threshold of time. To do that requires much training. And Corrales was concerned that, though I have the training, no threshold was open to me. But then I saw Bishop before he did, and now I am practicing using the gift and the training by coming to you. And you crossed into my time. Polly spread out her hands. I don't know how I did it, Anirul. I haven't any idea. I don't know if I could ever do it again. Corrales has been to many places, to many different times. I have crossed only one threshold, seen only you and Bishop. Corrales says that there is meaning, that you have come. Meaning for the pattern. What pattern? The pattern of lines drawn between the stars, between people, between places, between circles, like the line between the great stone and the water in a box. Polly thought of the book of constellations in her room with the lines drawn between the stars. Anirul looked at her, smiling. It is nice what I sit on. A chair. At the great stones there are chairs, but very different, carved out of stone. This holds my body with more ease. Polly wondered what Anirul would think of the rest of the house, of the bedroom, the kitchen, all the things that Polly took for granted. Hot running water, toilets, refrigerators, microwave, food processor. Would they seem like miracles to Anirul, or would she think them magic? Perhaps evil magic. Anirul, I'm very glad to see you even in the middle of the night, but why have you come? To see if I could, Anirul said simply. Everybody else was asleep, so I could practice the gift all alone. I came, and I called you, to know why you can come to my circle of time, to know if you have been sent to us by the Presence. The Presence? The one who is more than the mother, or the goddess, star-maker, wind-breather, earth-grower, sun-riser, rain-giver, the one who cares for all. Corrales says that it happens only once or twice in a pattern where the lines touch, so that the circles of time come together with the threshold open in both directions. When this happens, there is a reason. Have you asked the bishop? Bishop, too, says there is a reason, but he does not know what. Do you? Polly shook her head. Haven't the foggiest. I don't know the reason, Anirul, but I like you. I'm glad you're here. I would like to get to know you better. Friends? Yes, I'd like to be friends. It is lovely for druids. Sometimes. Friends care for each other. Yes. Protect each other. Friends do everything they can to protect each other. But it is not always positive. Anirul shook her head. In a terrible storm, or when lightning starts fire, or when other tribes attack. Friends try, Polly said firmly. Friends care. She felt deeply drawn to Anirul. Was it possible to develop a real friendship with a girl from 3,000 years ago? I would like to be your friend, Anirul. That is good. I am your friend, Anirul stood up. Bishop calls me Annie. Yes, Annie. I willed for you to wake up, to come here, to water in a box, and you came. Thank you. The quilt fell off my bed. I was cold. Quilt, bed, it would make no sense to Anarel. You came, Polly. Now I go. Anarel went to one of the north windows. See, now I know how to open it. She jumped lightly down and ran off into the night. Polly looked after her until she disappeared into the woods, then she closed the window. She stayed by the pool for several more minutes, but nothing happened. The water was quiet. She sat in one of the poolside chairs, wondering, until she grew drowsy and her eyelids drooped. She was warm now, even her toes. Had Anarel been part of a dream? She went upstairs. Perhaps she would understand more in the morning. She woke later than usual, dressed, and went downstairs. Her grandfather was sitting at the table drinking coffee and doing his puzzle. Polly poured herself half a cup of coffee, filled it with milk, and put it in the microwave. For the moment, she had forgotten her bad dream, forgotten going down to the pool to warm up, forgotten Anarel's visit. This does make cafe au lait much easier. I hate washing out a milky saucepan. Polly, her grandfather looked up from the paper, tell me what you know about time. She sat down. I don't know that much. Tell me what you know. Well, there's the space-time continuum, of course. And that means, well, that time isn't a separate thing apart from space. They make a thing together. And that's space-time. But I know there isn't any time at all if there isn't a mass for motion. Her grandfather nodded. Right, and Einstein's famous equation. Well, mass and energy are equivalent, so any energy an object uses would add to its mass, and that would make it harder to increase its speed. And as it approached the speed of light, its mass would be so enormous that it couldn't ever get to the speed of light. So in terms of space travel, you can't separate space travel from time travel. Good girl. So, I don't know, Granddad. How did I go back there? How did I go back 3,000 years? Suddenly, she remembered Anarel's visit the night before. But this was not the moment to talk about it. The pantry door opened and her grandmother came in. Her grandfather said, That's the billion-dollar question, isn't it? And I seem to have broken Einstein's equation. I mean, didn't I get there faster than the speed of light? I was here, and then I was there. Department of Utter Confusion, her grandmother said. Mr. Murray sliced bread and put it in the toaster. One theory I find rather comforting is that time exists so that everything doesn't happen all at once. What a picture! Polly had ignored the microwave timer's ping. Now she opened the door, took out her cup, and sat at her place. Hadron got up from his scrap of rug at the fireplace, greeted her by twining about her legs, purring, then returned to the warmth. Mrs. Murray took the bread from the toaster and put it on a plate in front of Polly. Eat. Thanks. Granddad's bread makes wonderful toast, her grandmother continued. Your grandfather and I have lived with contradictions all our lives. His interests have been with the general theory of relativity, which is concerned with gravity and the macrocosm, whereas I have spent my life with the microcosm, the world of particle physics and quantum mechanics. As of now, these theories appear to be inconsistent with each other. If we could find a quantum theory of gravity, Mr. Murray said, we might. We just might resolve the problem. Polly asked, would that explain the space-time continuum? That's the hope, Mrs. Murray said, and turned to answer the phone. And now Polly remembered her dream. Zachary. She hoped it would be Zachary on the phone, but her grandmother said, Good morning, Nathan. Yes, we're all here in one place and one time. That's dear of you. But why don't you two come here? You know you and Louise like to swim, Nays. I like to cook. No, don't bring anybody. See you this evening. She turned to her husband and Polly. As you gathered, that was Nathan. Louise has filled him with chagrin and remorse, as a result of which she hasn't been able to talk him out of feeling that he can protect Polly from the past if he's here with her, which is certainly logic know-how counterwise. They're coming over for dinner. Mr. Murray smiled. That was at least partly his motivation in calling. His wife smiled back. Cooking has never been Louise's thing. She's a perfectly adequate cook, but it's not foremost in her mind. And Nays has rather gourmet tastes, he added. And you're a terrific cook, Polly said. Her grandmother flushed. Oh dear, it does look as though I was fishing for a compliment. A well-earned one, her husband said. I enjoy cooking. It's therapy for me. Louise's therapy is her rose garden. You may note, Polly, that we don't have any roses. Accept it graciously, my love, her husband said. You're a good cook. Thanks, dearest. She sat down, elbows on the table, chin in hands. Polly, there is the matter of your parents. Polly looked at her questioningly. Your grandfather believes that you are right, that it would not be safe to take you out of the Tesseract, to send you back to Bene Seed. And if I don't take his fear seriously, you'd be with your parents. And if I didn't take his fear seriously, you'd be with your parents right now. How far can I go? Polly asked. How far away from the time threshold? Her grandfather folded his paper. I'm not sure, about 10 or so miles, I'm guessing, maybe more, maybe as far as Anaril and her people ranged, but not up in a plane, not across the country. Well, I really am in the Tesseract. And she told him about Aniril's visit. Her grandparents gave each other troubled looks. Don't tell Mother and Daddy, Polly urged. Not yet. We don't know enough. It sounds too impossible. Her grandfather said, if I know your father, he'd come and get you, and there'd be no reasoning with him, and that could be fatal. I hate secrets, her grandmother said, but I agree it would be best to keep silent for a few days. Till after Halloween, her grandfather said. Tomorrow, her grandfather nodded. Samhain, Polly said. We'll tell them everything on Sunday when they call, her grandmother said. Both grandparents looked at Polly and then at each other unhappily. And we'll pause there.